The species known as the Jiralhanae, or otherwise referred to as the brutes, are best known for their brutality and immense strength, which surpasses the average Sangheli and that of humanity's Spartan IIs. They are a fragmented people, segmented by various clans who value raw power over wisdom, resulting in a power-hungry society. The Jiralhanae are an undeniable force to be reckoned with, that is for sure, as behind their terrifying exterior lies a primal, unpredictable, and savage nature. Now, the history of the Jiralhanae is certainly a complex one, having been shaped by generations of internal conflict, their fairly recent introduction into the Covenant, and also their part in the massacre known as the Great Schism. But now, following the dissolution of the Covenant Empire, the Jiralhanae, more than others, have struggled with re-establishing themselves as an independent species. And following the destruction of their homeworld, their future is even more so unclear. But with uncertainty aside, for today's video, we'll be covering what we do know about them, as we'll be exploring the lore behind the Jiralhanae species, addressing their physiology, homeworld, history, culture, and society as a whole. We might not cover everything, so if there's anything you'd like to add, or if you wanted to share your thoughts on the Jiralhanae, don't forget to leave a comment down below. Now, without further ado, let's dive directly into the lore of the Jiralhanae. Towering over most other known species on record, the Jiralhanae stands anywhere between 8 foot 5 inches to 9 foot 2 inches tall, weighing anywhere between 1,125 to 1,500 pounds. Though this can only really be said for the male members of the species, as no data on the female members has been documented. Now, while one may be able to hypothesize that the female specimen may be notably smaller than the males due to our understanding of sexual dimorphism, it's not really a fair judgment to make, given our lack of understanding of extraterrestrial species. What we do know from the male specimen that have been observed is that their appearance in biology somewhat resembles that of one of Earth's gorillas, rhinoceros, or even a bear, which has led to their classification as a bipedal pseudo-ursine mammal. Their massive frames can likely be attributed to their planet's heightened gravity, which is over 2 times greater than that of Earth's, granting them immense strength in comparison to other sapient species, making them more than capable of delivering crushing blows in hand-to-hand combat. Their skin can be described as a thick gray leather hide, and without any grooming, can quickly become covered in a thick coat of tan, gray, brown, red, or black fur, which turns white as they age. Jiralhanae typically are either clean-shaven or sport mohawks, goatees, or beards. However, some Jiralhanae packs do away with shaving altogether, and the manner in which a Jiralhanae grooms really depends on their skein allegiance, large groups within their species which embrace certain cultural identities, partly identifiable through their fur presentation. We'll touch on this again later in the video. Now, looking at their hands, they possess 3 clawed fingers and an opposable thumb, as well as possess large, cloven, 2-toed feet. And their mouths are filled to the brim with often protruding, sharp, canine-like teeth. They are defined as an omnivorous species and require a highly caloric diet, which, more often than not, consists primarily of meat. And in some cases, in order to satiate that, they have been known to consume other sapient species, largely documented as doing so with humans, but it has been documented that they are more than willing to eat other species within the Covenant.
What about us? My belly aches, and his flesh is seared just the way I like it.
Due to their highly sensitive olfactory glands, they also have an exceptional sense of smell, which grants them their status of being excellent hunters. Additionally, they possess the natural ability to release pheromones which lead to an induced rage, aptly earning them their nickname of the brutes. When in adolescence, though, they lack the ability to control this release, as it is only after they've reached maturity that they are able to induce or altogether prevent the release of these pheromones. The Jiralhanae are capable of breathing in terrestrial environments similar to humans, meaning that they evolved in a nitrogen-oxygen-rich atmosphere, likely the reason that their blood is its reddish color. The lifespan of the Jiralhanae is comparable to that of humans, as on average they live to be about 70 to 90 years old. However, this was a more recent statistic, as in previous millennia it would have been much lower, but their introduction to the Covenant has provided access to previously undiscovered medical amenities, allowing them to prolong their lives with proper intervention. While the act of Jiralhanae reproduction has not been observed, it can be assumed that, like mammalian species on Earth, Jiralhanae are a viviparous species, meaning that the male provides the female with biological material, and the female will then gestate the young inside of their body until birth. Situated as the third planet in the Othsonan system, the Jiralhanae homeworld known as Doizak measures 15,491 miles in diameter and is orbited by 3 natural satellites, those being Soirapt, Tish, and Wariel, with the latter being a lifeless moon, and the others proving as prime locations for industrialization and colonization. As previously mentioned, the planet had a gravitational pull over 2 times greater than that of Earth, and experiences high levels of magnetism and tectonic activity. The last recorded population of the planet was roughly 12.5 billion. Covenant records have described the planet as being a world with a surface covered in lush, dense jungles, populated with formidable fortress cities, bunker complexes, and towering tree citadels. However, as a result of generations of nuclear warfare, the planet remains nearly uninhabitable, covered largely in plains of nuclear glass and struggling civilizations. Temperatures on the planet typically range anywhere between 5 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Evolving in the dense jungles of Doizak, the Jiralhanae would one day be discovered by the ancient advanced species known as the Forerunners. Having been identified as a developing sapient race, they would go on to be one of the more than 10,000 species indexed due to the impending flood threat. And following the activation of the halo array, the specimens were returned to their planet to begin rebuilding their society unafflicted by the parasite's harm. Now, despite their grimacing exterior and otherwise brutish nature, historically, the Jiralhanae evolved to be incredibly intelligent, even achieving spaceflight and spacefaring status in their recent history. However, their savage nature got the best of them, inevitably leading them to conflict, and the warring clans of their homeworld triggered a war known as the Great Immolation, a series of battles which left their planet in ruin. And as a result, they had undone generations of technological advancement, leaving the Jiralhanae in a pre-industrialization state. When discovered by the Covenant in the year 2492, the Jiralhanae were found in a rather primitive state on their inhospitable, war-torn world. As the Covenant extended their hand to establish contact, they were met with distrust from the elders of their race. Yet the young Jiralhanae, only having known the irradiated and desolate landscape of their planet, happily embraced the opportunity to catapult their species back to its previous status. However, this was all met with concern, almost exclusively expressed by the Sanghili, who were disgusted by the idea of a partnership with such a race. Yet it was because of this formidable nature of the race that the Sanshayum were quick to settle the Jiralhanae on worlds that were rich in resources, hoping to deter any other races seeking to claim them for themselves. This practice went unquestioned by the Jiralhanae, as they themselves lacked the education on how to mine and process the resources themselves, even being restricted from the technologies necessary. This made them incredibly dependent, but also loyal to the Covenant's wishes, ensuring that their prophets had secure control over resources with absolutely no competition. Shortly after the Jiralhanae's inclusion into the Covenant's military, a group of Sanghili commanders went before the Covenant High Council and claimed that the Jiralhanae's pack mentality would inevitably bring conflict between the two species, citing the Jiralhanae's natural instincts to fight to the top of any hierarchy as a prime example. So, the Sanghili commanders proposed that instead, any non-violent actions that the Jiralhanae exhibited should be encouraged. The High Council believed the argument was fair and restricted the Jiralhanae to heavy infantry and shock trooper roles as a result. This left them in a lowly status for many years, akin to cannon fodder like the Ungoi. Brought on by generations of influential Sanghili questioning the decisions of the Sanshayum, the High Prophets sought to take advantage of this feud between the two species. During this time, an individual by the name of Tartarus would be recognized by the Prophet of Truth to become chieftain of the Jiralhanae, and had him report directly to himself. Then, in secret, he and other loyal members of the Jiralhanae species would be offered a role in the expulsion of the Sanghili from the Covenant's military, making the Jiralhanae their permanent replacement. While their age-old protectors were powerful, intelligent, and resourceful, the Jiralhanae were stronger, unquestioning, and devoutly committed to the word of the prophets. And after their many years of belittlement and discrimination, the Jiralhanae were happy to get revenge on their commanders. The catalyst for this plan was the death of the High Prophet of Regret, as the Sanghili Honor Guard protecting him were unable to prevent his death. Instantly, the Covenant began to see the power shift, as the first public decision was to relieve the Sanghili from the duty of Honor Guard, and have the Jiralhanae take their place. But this was not their first act of betrayal, as the Prophet of Truth had secretly ordered the execution of Sangheli forces on Earth before Regret's death. And in the days to follow, Truth had also ordered the Sangheli members of the High Council to attend a private meeting in the control room of Installation 05, where they were then ambushed and brutally massacred by Jiralhanae forces. In the coming days, the betrayal which had the Sangheli blindsided by their subordinates would culminate into what would be known as the Great Schism. The Jiralhanae would relieve all Sangheli from their command and presume leadership of Covenant vessels. This was done in force, leading to the immediate death of countless Sangheli. In the aftermath of the Covenant's dissolution, the Jiralhanae have scattered amongst the stars, unorganized and still failing to become completely unified, with infighting and the lack of knowledge plaguing them with famine and strife. And while infighting and genocidal battles against the Sangheli continued after the Great Schism in 2552, many of the clans native to Doizak and its moons aligned themselves with the Banished in hopes of unification against opposition and growing threats. However, in 2559, Doizak was targeted by the Created as Cortana wished to enforce her martial law. Identifying Atriox as the leader of the species at the time, she called on him to comply but was met with resistance, and his failure to meet Cortana's demands resulted in Doizak's destruction by the synchronized attack of several Guardians. This cataclysmic event resulted in the death of billions of Jiralhanae, along with any real remnants of their ancient culture now seemingly lost. In addition to this, shards of the planet have been documented as colliding with its moons, causing even more damage to the neighboring populations. As of 2560, the Jiralhanae have begun to regroup, identifying that Doizak's fragmented remains have provided them with a rich wealth of materials capable of reconstitution and rebuilding efforts. Otherwise, some Jiralhanae have accepted the idea that the Banished's presence on Installation 07 signifies that the ancient Halo is to become their new home. Jiralhanae culture is best defined by their valuation of strength and ferocity, as it plays a large part in the way that families and packs demonstrate their status. This is universally understood, and the species as a whole is unified through a deeply rooted understanding that life is a test of strength and cunning, both on the battlefield and on the hunt. The species did lose some of their cultural identity after its introduction to the Covenant and with the adoption of the Sangheli language, but parts of their ancient culture have persisted throughout the markings on their weapons and clan banners. As was customary with any Jiralhanae being inducted into the Covenant, they were required to convert to the Covenant's religion of worshipping the Forerunners. But previously, their species did engage in the worship of totems and idols, which represented long-abandoned religious practices related to the lunar cycles of Doizak's moons. In comparison to the other species within the Covenant, they were perhaps the least apprehensive when it came to accepting these new beliefs. However, following the dissolution of the Covenant, most, if not all, have quickly abandoned the belief in the Great Journey. Now, while Jiralhanae generally do not discriminate when it comes to weaponry, as it has been seen on many occasions that they'll utilize human and plasma-based weaponry alike, they do prefer to utilize weapons of their own making. This is due to the Jiralhanae-made weapons being notoriously lethal, primitive, and brutal. They almost always feature a blade and are manufactured at warforges or workshops, as is seen with weapons such as the Pegasus Workshop Spiker, Javokada Workshop Brute Shot, Flactura Workshop Skewer, and of course, the famously associated Gravity Hammer. Across their cultures, it is understood that the Jiralhanae hold disdain towards other species, with an especially disproportionate hatred for the Sangheli, due of course to their years of mistreatment under their command. However, after the collapse of the Covenant, some Jiralhanae are willing to work alongside the Sangheli again, as is demonstrated within the ranks of the mercenary group known as the Banished. The most basic unit of social cohesion in the Jiralhanae society is the pack, consisting of families or military units led by a dominant alpha male, often held together by a shared ideology or shared responsibility of protecting their packmates. The strongest of these packs use their reputation as an identity of sorts, forming alliances with weaker groups or other family units, in turn forming a clan. Clans thus will share a similar goal imposed by their leaders, or through a mutual interest. Another way that one can show their allegiance to their pack or clan is adorning their bodies with tattoos. As Jiralhanae society strictly operates as an authoritarian dictatorship, leadership is carried out by the strongest of their males, the chieftain, whose social status is established through his feats on the battlefield, his marital ties, and his sexual success. As the role of chieftain is passed between individuals, so is a ceremonial gravity hammer, which is passed upon a predecessor's death, denoting an individual's new status. Something also worthy of noting is that the female members of the Jiralhanae species are not observed as having any roles within their military, acting solely as mothers or caretakers. When looking at the actual structuring of the Jiralhanae society as a whole, it is more or less an extension of their pack concept, and something very apparent in their society is their unwavering commitment to honoring their lineage and pack. So as in the event of the death of one of their packmates, a Jiralhanae will descend into a fit of pheromone-induced berserker rage. Conversely, this same society also requires that disputes of power need be solved with mortal combat, as is seen in challenges of leadership or in blood lineages when a male comes of age and wishes to challenge his father for the role of chieftain. While it may seem like their society is fragmented because of its structuring, all members of the species belong to overarching skein groupings, or social divisions which represent divergent views on how they interact with their world, conduct themselves, celebrate their customs, and even their adoption of technology. Most Jiralhanae fall into one of two dominant skeins at this time, the rh'tol and the veloth. These two skeins display stark cultural and political differences, with the rh'tol being considered more primitive and aggressive, and the veloth being more sophisticated and open to new ideas. Similarly, there exist master packs or alpha packs, elevated forms of the clan structure which act as a governing entity. An example of this would be the Children of Oth-Sonen, a post-Covenant group who were willing to negotiate for peace with the Sanghili, with mediation from the United Nations Space Command. However, in recent times, the Banished seem to be largely gaining traction among the herding Jiralhanae people, making it even more difficult to unify under one banner, and also develop peaceful, non-transactional relationships with other species. While it is known that the Jiralhanae adopted the Sanghili language following their induction into the Covenant, it is not entirely clear if their species alone has one singular language, or is comprised of multiple based on regions or location. But from what we do know, their native language can be characterized as animalistic sounds like deep growls, barks, howls, and even roars. However, they also possess the unique ability to communicate feelings and emotions through scents and musks, with young Jiralhanae struggling to control their scent releases before learning moderation as they age. Something also unique to the Jiralhanae species is that their names often sound Latin-like in nature, such as with individuals such as Tartarus or Bractinus, with the suffix "us" in their names indicating maturity or battle experience, comparable to the E suffix in Sanghili naming conventions. Additionally, there is also the suffix, seen in names like Pavium and Parabum. This specific pattern is associated with the rh'tol skein. However, this is not always the case, as not all Jiralhanae names adhere to these lineage patterns, as is exemplified by individuals such as Atriox or Castor. In conclusion, the Jiralhanae species stands as a truly formidable and captivating force within the Halo universe, with their history being one of turmoil and transformation, from their society being on the brink of collapse, to their integration into the Covenant, and eventually the loss of their homeworld. Even though their actions during the Great Schism made them deserving of the Sanghili's retribution, it must also be recognized that they had received generations of belittlement during their service to the Covenant, having been limited by the insecurity of their peers, and instead used as cannon fodder. They were hungry to deliver their revenge. But none of that really matters now, as their actions have brought about an end to their empire altogether, and they're left putting the fragments of their society back together. One can only wonder where things will go from their species from here, but that's a topic for another day. Thank you so much for watching this installment of my Species Profile series, where I cover the lore and history of the different species within the Halo universe. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a like and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. And if you'd like to keep up to date on when the next video is going to be released, be sure to turn on the notification bell and keep an eye on the community section for bonus content and updates. And don't forget to leave me a comment on your thoughts regarding the Jiralhanae species and what you think may be in store for them in the future. But that's all for now, so I will see you in the next video.